well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. I assume that you can hear the, sound of my voice. I assume that. What I'm going to do, I shouldn't have closed that yet. Let me go back to the chat. Did I copy it? That's a copy of the handout I'm going to be using today. As before, if somebody would also copy that, so when people show up late, which, is an inevitable thing, and I'm talking about something and they're saying, where's the handout? If you could, paste it to keep them happy, I would appreciate that. It would just be a good thing. All right. So what we're talking about today, and if we look at the document, it's about closing and objections. Right? That's the goal. And here, let me make this a little bit smaller so I can see what's going on over here. All right. There we go. One of the things that, I would ask people this question when we were doing these all in groups, which it may be a thing, but I've noticed that it's being pushed off a little bit because of COVID. But when I would do this in groups, and the reason I mentioned groups of people is because I could see people's faces when I asked them this question. And the question that I would ask agents is, if you didn't sell real estate, what would you sell instead? And I oftentimes would get a puzzled look from people, like I was asking them just some weird question that, they didn't know how to answer. And usually what would come from that is the statements like, well, I don't know what you mean, nothing. In other words, this is related to the question that if you were to summarize what you do for a living, and the goal is to come up with 1 or 2 word definitions, what would that be? Now, you might say, well, I'm in the real estate business, and some people would say, I'm in the marketing business, I'm in consulting business, and I'm in providing service business, and all those other things. But of course, the word that we're looking for is the S word. You're in sales, right? You're in sales. And even if you're unsure that you're in sales, then get your real estate license out and read, assuming you're not a broker, read what it says, right? And I'll bet that for most of you, when you look at your license, it says salesperson's license. Sales. So whether you ever wanted to be, whether you're happy about it, welcome to the world of sales. And there are, when you look at why are agents successful, right, you could kind of break this down into 2 very broad groups. One is what I would call the technical group, right? Do you know how to use the MLS? Do you know how to use RPR? Do you know how to give somebody an estimate of their closing costs, or the net sheet if they're selling, or a buyer estimate if they're buying? Do you know how to use the lockbox key? Do you know how to fill out a contract? Do you know what all the disclosures are? Do you know how to use zip forms? There's a whole bunch of that stuff, right? That is sort of technical stuff. And you kind of need to know that, at least to a very, very basic level. You need to understand how to do those things. The other part of being successful in real estate is, to stick with the T's, we'll call it technique, right? So you have the technical part, and then you have technique. And by technique, I mean that you don't have to be a natural-born salesperson, but you need to understand the sales process and what's involved in it and how to move it along, right? You do need to understand that. Now, we're not talking about old school, the old school sales was, you could sell ice boxes to Eskimos, that sort of thing. And a good salesperson used to be defined as somebody who could get people to do things they do not want to do. That is not what I'm talking about. Because we're in real estate. And I'm telling you, if you spend your time convincing people to do things that they do not want to do, what's going to happen is you're going to meet lawyers, let's just say. You're going to meet lawyers. And we don't really want to meet lawyers. Isn't that true? We don't. Lawyers are like dentists, because we only see them when something is wrong, right? How incisive. So where I'm going with this is that there are many real estate agents that understand the technical side really, really well. They know how to fill out a contract. They know how to use the MLS. They know how to do all of that fancy stuff, but they don't make any money because they don't have anyone to do it with, right? And so the goal of this is for you to become more adept at closing, which I'll define what that means. It's not necessarily talking about closing an escrow, and how to overcome objections. Now, nothing works all the time, right? I've had agents want to watch me like at open houses and things like that, and it doesn't work all the time, right? Even though I'm relatively smooth when it comes to answering objections and things like that. There is no magic words. If I knew magic words, I probably wouldn't be talking to you guys right now. I'd be making a lot of money doing something else with the magic words. However, what we're trying to do, what our goal is, we're not trying to do it, what our goal is to increase our percentage. So you understand that to make money in real estate, there's these stages, right? So if you have a closing, you're going to have appointments. And one of the metrics that you should be, following is how many appointments do you have? Now, at the beginning, you might need 4 appointments to close one transaction. Right. Now, you might need, then before appointments, there's conversations, and you might need 50 conversations to get an appointment, and you might need 4 appointments to close a transaction. Does everybody see where I'm going with this? Right. And you should see what your numbers are, but you've got to be doing these different stages. Now, if we can increase our conversion rate, what happens is we increase our income without having to increase our prospecting, lead generation, or let's just call it conversations that could be appointment setting. And there's this reported story of these 2 golfers. And they were professional golfers. This is some years ago. They played at essentially the same tournaments every year. And one of the golfers made $1 million in winnings, and the other golfer made $100,000. So one was earning 10 times as much as the other, and when they analyzed the difference between the 2 of them, it came down to 1/4 of a stroke a hole. That's it. 1/4 of 1 stroke a hole. That was the difference between somebody making 10 times as much as the others. But of course, that 1/4 of a stroke, when you multiply that times 18 holes, times tournament after tournament after tournament, you understand somebody's making 10% of what the other person is making. So what we're looking to do is to give you a better ratio, right? You understand that rather than to pick up 1/4 of a stroke, let's say here or there. And that could happen by being better at closing and objections. So the basic sales process, this is old school but hasn't changed, is that generally in order to sell something, you first of all have to have rapport with people. People don't know, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? That's a different subject. You have to qualify them, and although usually real estate agents are thinking in terms of a buyer, which would apply, but this would also be in terms of a seller. And what qualifying really means is that we're going to ask people questions sufficient that we're going to be able to find out what they want and what they need. So I'm going to share it one more time, but then there we go. Somebody's already on it. You guys are good. So qualify, for example, do we need to qualify sellers? And the answer is yes. Why are you thinking of selling your home at this time? What are your goals? What are you looking to accomplish? Now, what we're looking for in the qualifying stage is to uncover problems. And because if people don't have any problems, they don't need real estate agents. Then in the show stage, which could mean showing property, but it also could mean showing a seller how you're going to help them get what they're looking for, right? How they're going to reach their goals, get the most money in the least time with the least inconvenience, right? And then finally, what we're focusing on today is closing. And closing could mean, well, we're closing a transaction, but in terms of a buyer, it could mean getting a commitment from a buyer to buy a particular house. And it also could mean in a listing presentation to get a seller to make a commitment to working with you. All right, so that's what we're talking about. Now, this whole idea, by the way, of closing, some people don't like that idea. Right? Because they don't want to be pushy, and we don't want to get people to do things they don't want to do, and I don't like it when people are trying to close me, so I don't want to try and close other people. There's a way of doing it where you're not being annoying or obnoxious or disingenuous or not really representing their best interests. But this is a natural part of a sales process, right? The natural conclusion to a sales process is for you, and closing in this case means to ask them to make a decision, right? Which, by the way, typically means they're going to have to sign something. One of the old school rules is if you haven't had anybody sign anything recently, you're not making any money, right? I'm just saying, right? If no one's signing stuff with you, you're not making any money. So what we eventually mean is somebody's going to sign something. Don't make this unnatural. Don't wiggle around when you close, right? I've seen agents wiggling. I've seen people sweating, right? They're nervous. I make the comment when I go on a listing appointment with an agent, besides the fact that I know how to answer a lot of questions, one of my strengths is I don't really feel anything. I'm not nervous. I'm not flustered. I'm not anxious. I'm not concerned. It's just another appointment. Right? Now, when you get to that point, you're going to find that you can ask a closing question without your heart starting to race or beat. And I used to make this joke that real estate agents, people that I was coaching, that they have like a little meter, right? Something that, could be seen, and there's like a dial. And when you're asking questions, and if the dial moves, it means you're asking let's say a serious question. Right, you're asking closing questions, this used to be called the guts, the guts meter, because how much, what kind of guts do you have, right, to ask this question? And if that meter never moves, then you probably aren't getting anywhere, right? At some point, somebody has to say, hey, do you want to buy this house? Somebody has to say, do you see any reason why I wouldn't be able to sell your house for the most possible in the best time for you? Do you see any reason why I wouldn't be able to do that? And they say, no, great. Well, let's get going then. Somebody, you understand, has to say, let's do it. Right? Now, I'm going to skip a bad joke, but somebody has to say. And if you're waiting for them to say, well, Mike, it looks great. You did a great job. We'd like to get going. So why don't you tell us what's going to happen next? I guess there's forms for us to sign. You're going to send them to me. Or if you're waiting for them to take the lead and tell you what needs to be done, you may have a really long wait, right? Closing, in a sense, is the simplest step in the process. The hardest part is finding out what do they really want and what motivates them, and to be able to get to that. Because sometimes people don't tell you. But if you've asked them the right questions and you've qualified them and you know what they're looking to do and you can show them how you're doing, getting them to sign contracts is not a difficult part if you've done the other things. Now, a lot of times agents are afraid of being too pushy, or being rejected, right? And by the way, I actually think that there's a group of agents, probably not anyone today, right? Because you guys are all, pretty advanced and all of that. But there are actually agents out there that it isn't the fear of rejection so much that holds them back. It's the fear of acceptance. Because some agents, none of you, I'm sure, but some agents are so technically bad at everything that they're afraid that somebody's going to say, yeah, I am interested in selling my home. Could you come over this afternoon and, tell me what it's worth and tell me what you're going to do and how it all works. Some of you, not you, I understand, but some of the people that aren't in attendance might actually not want that to happen because they're not ready, they don't know how to do anything, and the last thing they want to hear is today somebody come and talk to me, right? But what we're simply doing is helping people make a decision. And some people have difficult time making decisions on their own, and why would somebody be talking to a real estate agent? It may be to help them make a decision. How about that? That might be one of the reasons they're talking to you, because you could help them make a decision. And that's all we're trying to do. Now, notice I say some of us have a difficult time making decisions on their own and need some, and to avoid making a mistake they will later regret. So when we're closing, assuming we've done a good job qualifying and we know what it is they need, when we're closing, we're not trying to get people to do something they don't want to do. But where our goal is to prevent people from making a mistake that they're going to later regret. For example, they like the house. They like the house. But they want to think it over. They want to spend a little bit of time. And then when they come back, they say, all right, we're ready. We want to make an offer, and you go and put it into the MLS again to look up the property, and it says that it's pending. It's active contingent. Somebody has already made an offer. So now you tell your clients, we're too late. Somebody already bought it. What's your second choice? Who wants the second choice, right? You understand? They want their first choice, and they didn't get the first choice because they waited too long to make a decision. So if you're comfortable in that you've seen the inventory and that this really is it for them, this is it, then it would be incumbent upon you. It would be something you might want to do, is to give them a nudge to make a decision, because if you don't, they're going to regret it and blame you. Right? Because you didn't push them. You say, well, I wish you would have told us, if you pushed us, we would have made an offer. Oh, God, People expect you to ask them to buy. Don't disappoint them. I mean, they're talking to a salesperson, right? Now, I guess some of you may not, be sure of that, but they're talking to a salesperson. And so they should expect that, right? Just don't disappoint them. Closing is asking prospects to accept what you have done, accept what you have said, and to move forward. That's all it is. There's a difference between being a licensee and being a salesperson. By the way, did you know there's a difference between being an agent and being a licensee? To be an agent, you have to represent other people, right? If you're a licensee, it just means you have a license. And if you were to look at who is making the money in real estate, you'll see that a very small percentage of the people are making most of the money. I like the 80-20 rule, but in this case, it's really closer to 90-10. The last time I saw something that the CAR had done, they said that 87% of the agents were earning 13% of the commissions, and 13% of the agents were earning 87% of the commissions. It's closer to 90-10 than 80-20. But what you have in real estate is a relatively large group of real estate agents that are not doing very much, right? Occasionally, they might do something, right? If it falls into their lap, but they're generally not doing very much. But there's another group of people that are doing a lot of business. What separates those two? Well, sometimes it's who they know, and there's the fact that they've been around, but a lot of times is that the ones that are doing the most business are better at closing, they're better at the sales part. You have to say to yourself, I've got to become a strong closer, right? If you don't close, you're not going to make any money. And again, I've had several transactions. One recently, I think I mentioned this last week, where the agent on the other side was in the top 1% of Coldwell Banker. That's what it says. email signature. And this was one of the worst offers I've seen in a long time. And I see a lot of bad real estate offers. I see a lot of bad offers written by brand new people. And most of the new people write better offers than this agent does. She probably is in the top 1% because she's good at talking, networking, and closing and getting people to make a commitment. You realize that you might have a friend who's thinking of buying or selling a house. And you might think that because you told your friend that you have a real estate license, that your friend is going to use you if they decide to buy or sell a house. You may think that's true. What may happen, however, if your friend goes out and ends up meeting other real estate agents, including one who's a good closer, your friend may end up buying a house without you being involved at all. I'm just saying. So becoming a good closer means the customer is going to get what they want, right? And you'll get what you want, and your office and everybody else that's connected to you will be happier with you too, right? Your family will be happy. Everybody should be happy. Truth. A yes is okay. A no is okay. It's the maybe that really kills us. And I've invited somebody to come and talk. I'm going to get into this maybe when we get a little bit closer to the objections. But if you come from fear, from need, from desperation, then it's like sharks that can smell the blood in the water. People will sense that, and they're going to resist. You understand? They'll become less willing to move forward at that time if they sense that you're coming from death. So what your mindset has to be, a yes is fine, a no is fine, but a maybe, it can't be a maybe for very long, right? You don't need them all. You don't want a maybe. And the more times you ask, the more often somebody's going to say yes. Now, I'm not into one of the people I invited today, but haven't heard back yet. There's a session I'm planning on doing on negotiation. And one of the parts of this that's a little bit different from the old school, and the question is, what are you looking to do? I'm going to move back up here a little bit. What are you looking to do when you're communicating with people? Where I'm going with this is, are you looking for a yes or are you looking for a no? Now, historically, many sales trainings are about what are called yes momentum. And in fact, if you Google search real estate agent trainers, you'll see there's a guy in Southern California, and he actually has a company, I think, and it's called, I'm not making this up, Yes Masters. He thought, this is obviously a middle-aged white guy, he thought that Yes Masters was a good idea for a name of a business. I had problems with that when I first heard it, but the whole concept is, if you get people to say yes, and you get them to say yes, and you get them to say yes, they're going to keep saying yes. It's called yes momentum. And I think that's BS. And I happen to know that one of the original studies that was done on yes momentum came from a really long time ago, and it had to do with people that were selling encyclopedias. So they would go and knock on the door, and the person would open the door, and they would say, "Hi, do you live here?" They would say yes. Do you have children? They would say yes. Are they in school? They would say yes. Is their grades important to you? And you understand. And so the idea is that after they'd said yes like 50 times, when you said you want to buy a set of encyclopedias, like a zombie, they'll be saying yes, and give you their credit card. And that was a really long time ago. And frankly, I don't really see that as being a thing anymore. And I'm going to do a little bit more on what are some of the ways we could word things a little bit different. But when you hear somebody doing that, where they're asking you yes, yes, yes kind of questions, it's almost like you're being taken hostage. And if you're interested, by the way, in reading about this, there's 2 books that I would recommend. One of them is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And Never Split the Difference is about, he's a former FBI hostage negotiator. And the other one, which I'm in the process of reading now, but I don't remember the guy's last name, it's called Start With No, N-O. And it's about how getting people, people are more relaxed when you ask them the question and they can say no. So rather than saying, do you want to go ahead and have me list your home today, right? Because I'm looking for a yes. Can you see any reasons why we shouldn't go ahead and list your home today? That's a no, right? Now, they both put me in the same place, but one of them is usually easier to get people to say because the people know that if they say yes to something, they could be in trouble, right? They might have bought something they didn't want. Anyhow, there'll be more about this in a negotiation class I'm putting together. I've even invited somebody from one of those organizations to be a speaker. I'll let you know. Good closers are goal-oriented, right? Do you have a plan? By the way, before the end of the year, I'm going to be doing a business planning clinic, probably at the association of, it's going to be held live someplace, but broadcast because most people still aren't going to these things. And if you had a goal, like my goal is to sell 12 houses, 1 a month, right? That's not just an easy goal, 1 a month. That's all we ask, right? 1 a month. Then if you have a goal and you know that you need a certain number of appointments to reach that goal and you need a certain number of conversations to reach that appointment, and you've set goals for yourself every week as to how many conversations you're going to have and appointments you're going to set, you understand having that goal in your mind will make it easier for you to ask closing questions. And you need to be prepared. Now, this session, I'm not going through all of the different scripts, all of the different scripts. If you're at EXP, in Ascend, they have scripts. If you search for scripts, you'll find scripts. If you go to this website, there's a website that has all sorts of amazing stuff, right? It's called Google. And if you went there and you wanted to see scripts for real estate agents, you would find scripts and scripts and scripts. Jim Camp, that's it. Thank you, Oscar. Jim Camp. And he actually has a method called the CAMP method, right? Which, it's hard for me, thanks Oscar, it's hard for me to talk and think, as many of you have noticed, at the same time, right? But doing things like that can increase our, hi Michael, would you please share the Google link again? All right. I'm going to stop looking at my messages for a while. Other people can do it. All right. So we're not going to go through every possible script. But one of the best suggestions I received when I was getting started in real estate was if you were going to buy or sell, what would be the objections? What would be the questions you would ask if you were going to question a real estate agent? What would be the questions that you would ask? What would be the objections that you might raise? And then the goal for you as the agent is to take a look at that list and say, all right, if they say this to me, what's my plan? By the way, you should have a plan for what to say when people ask you, so how's the market? All right, you should have a plan, the elevator speech. So there are some things that we would do, and some of this is kind of old school, but it's still true, is things that you can do before you ask them to sign anything. All right, these are just some examples. Now, I've already gone over some other seller and buyer dialogues, and we'll be doing more about this, but the minor point close. Like if there's patio furniture, if there's a chandelier, if there's curtains or some window dressings, and they make a comment, they being a buyer in this instance, about that, you might ask them if that would be something you would want to include in the contract. Now, if people, by the way, this isn't going to get somebody to buy a property they don't want to buy, right? Because I've had clients say, nah, don't worry, we don't need to worry about that because we're probably not going to buy this house, right? Okay, great, right? Why not, right, is of course the question, because now we're qualifying the buyer a little bit better, and then we could show them maybe more targeted homes, but a lot of times you don't know until you're showing homes. The buyer doesn't know what they want until they actually start looking at homes that are on the market. But a minor point close is when you ask questions about minor points, like on a listing, you might say, do you think we could do open houses in 2 weeks? Or do you want do you think, are you going to want your property to be staged? Would you like me to arrange for a house cleaner to come in? Those are minor points, and when they start saying, yes, we want you to make arrangements for a house cleaner to come in, or yes, you understand they basically have agreed to work with you, right? Alternative choices is, again, an old school thing, but if I say to somebody, well, could you meet me at 6 o'clock on Thursday evening, there's a really good chance I'm going to get no, right? Because they may not be available at 6 o'clock. If I said, so what generally works better for you, right? During the week or weekends, and if we were going to have a quick conversation about how to move forward, what works better for you? Now, they're either going to say weekdays or weekends. You understand there isn't a third choice, right? No isn't an answer to which works better for you, weekdays or weekends, other than no, I wouldn't talk to you under any circumstances at any time. I guess they could say no then, but otherwise they're going to say weekends, maybe, right? Great. Saturday or Sunday, which works better? Sunday, morning, afternoon, evening. You see, by doing that, we have a much better chance of ending up with an appointment in our calendar than saying, how about 6 o'clock, Thursday, p.m., I'm available. By the way, one of the reasons I use my calendar link, which I've included in here, for those of you that are interested in learning more about how to increase your business and become more effective and would like to talk to me about that, you could click on that link. But one of the reasons I use that is so that I'm not doing a lot of back and forth with people about when would work, right? They can sort of pick it. But when you're asking them, giving them two options. Are you going to list your property with an agent who provides the premium marketing services that you need to get the highest possible price? Or are you going to list with an agent who provides less service? I had a conversation yesterday. I'm working with another agent. It looks like we're going to be listing a $4 million commercial property in San Rafael. If you know anybody that wants to buy an office building, let me know. And the discussion was about whether or not, how much commission are we going to charge? Right now, commercial is different than residential. There's a lot more weirdness that goes on with commissions. And then the question was, well, what about a flat fee? What about, all those whatabouts? And so the conversation was that I had with the owner was, what are you looking to do? Are you looking to get the highest price possible? Or are you looking to pay, are you looking to net the most money, or are you looking to pay the least commission? What would you say your goal is? Net the most money or pay the least commission? What's the goal? And she said, net the most money. Well, let's talk about that. Tie downs are while we're having a conversation with somebody, simply to understand whether or not we're on the right track. Is that what you meant? This is what you meant, isn't it? Is that, wouldn't you agree? Is that, don't you? Isn't it? Could you? There's a lot of these. If we make a statement and then ask them if they agree. Now, again, this works a lot better is that if you've asked enough questions so that you know what they are looking for and you're actually replying to that, then a tie down, which, don't you agree? Would you agree? What do you think? That sort of thing. It makes them participate in the process. Sharp angle close. Right? I asked this question, I think, yesterday to somebody. I asked, if we found you the house today, are you ready to buy it? And the person nodded. Right? That's a good question to ask people. If we found you the right house, are you ready to buy? right? A similar one, when do you plan on selling your home? You know, that's a sharp angle that sometimes they call it a sharp angle close, right? And I remember there was a time when I was nervous for some reason to ask people, when do you plan on selling your home, right? I was just, for some reason, I thought that was kind of a pushy, you know, kind of intrusive question to ask people. And so I remember asking somebody, you know, when do you plan on selling their home? And the reaction I got is they acted like that was just a normal, simple question, and they answered it. They said, well, in a few months, when we're done, daughter goes to college, and we're planning on putting our home. They just answered me, right? Is your decision going to be based on the county of the spousal amount of home? Do you see how the system is? And anyhow, those are just, we're asking a sharp close. Make a decision, you know, finding out where they are now. Again, if we were wearing those little meters, those questions sometimes move the meter more than, you know, how are you feeling today? So when we're discussing things like commissions, right, I sometimes say it's a service fee, the fee for service, referring to down payment as your initial investment, the monthly payment is your monthly investment, the contract is an agreement. Right? Rather than saying to buy, you talk about them owning things. Selling or sold, you know, get involved. That one isn't as, you know, or do you want to get involved in the current market is the way that would sort of be worded. Rather than talking about making deals, these are opportunities. And rather than asking people to sign something, I'm going to need your okay or your authorization on the form. I'm going to be emailing it to you. Right, and we don't, you know, if you say you're giving them your pitch, you know. Now, by the way, sometimes when my client is a salesperson, I had one of those last year in Willow Glen. I used all the jargon. I said, because he wanted to hear those words, right? So, what if they say they want both, net the most money and pay the least commission? Yeah, you know, I understand how you feel, you know, because, I mean, we would all like it all if we could get it, right? You know, there's this old saying that, you know, people in hell want ice water too. So there's a trade-off. Now, if you're going to net the most money, right? So the question is, and this is what I was going over yesterday with the client, if you're going to net the most money, there's two parts of the net. One part is gross, one part is expenses, and then the bottom part is the net. Now, if somebody says, I want both, really, you want to pay the least commission, but that's as important as you netting the most money. Is that really true? That paying the least commission is more important than the net? How about this? I'll bet you would pay me a 10% commission if the end result was you netted more money than if you paid me a 1% commission. Isn't that true? You would pay me 10% if you knew you would net more money than paying me 1%. Isn't that true? And when they say, well, yeah, if it really netted me more money by paying you more. So the question really isn't the amount of the commission. The question is whether or not I'm going to net more money. Right? Isn't that really the question? Because the commission is just one of the points that's on this. Now, if this was a real conversation, I would get into it about, you know, if a real estate agent, what would allow you to get the most money possible when you sell your home? Right? What would that involve? Well, obviously the condition of your property is important, the school district you're in, what your neighbors look like, right? Your upgrades, how clean is it, how well is it presented and staged, all of that stuff, right, is important. But assuming those things are equal, assuming we have two homes that are essentially equal in terms of condition and presentation and all of that sort of stuff, and one sells for more than the other, why? Why would one sell for more than the other? And the two probable answers could be one of them was marketed more effectively, and the agent in charge was a better negotiator. A better negotiator. And can you understand that if you had somebody that was a really good negotiator, that could easily be worth 1, 2, or even 3% in terms of the price you're ultimately going to get? By the way, I've had this experience because I've written offers in this year, one that got accepted in Saratoga, where the listing agent was really doing a good job of working everybody up, right? Working the people against each other and getting more money out of the buyers than would have been gotten had the listing agent didn't do that. So what I would ask somebody is that agent who said they'll list your home for 0.5% or 1% or a flat fee, how good of a negotiator is that agent? I ask the sellers when the agent said they'd do it for 1%, did you ask them to do it for 1% or did they volunteer to do it for 1%? And you know, almost always the answer is they volunteered. So how good of a negotiator is that agent? The one who says, I'll do it for 1%. Not much of a negotiator, right? They gave everything away as the opening salvo, right? They gave everything away. So if you have an agent who can't even negotiate for themselves, and you're putting them in charge of negotiating a $2 million, $1,800,000 property sale for you, what could go wrong with that? Right? Obviously, this is an agent whose way of making a deal, of closing a transaction, is to cut the price. That's how you make a deal. You cut your price. You cut your commission. You do everything for the other side. You don't charge them very much money. That's how you get business. How does that business model reflect on your goals to net the most money in the shortest time? How does that reflect? This is an agent who's going to tell you to cut the price, cut the price, cut the price, give in, give in, give in. That's their business model. Now, I'm going to fight for first of all, my commission. I'm actually going to do things with my commission that's going to increase the pool of potential buyers, which would be more likely for you to get a higher price. When we do get offers, I'm going to be good at negotiating on your behalf to get you a higher price. I fight for my commission, I fight for my money, but I also will fight for yours. And you can't expect an agent who won't even fight for their own money to fight for your money. They don't even fight for their own money. They're certainly not going to fight for your money. Now, I'm planning on doing a class just on negotiation. But you understand that's really the answer to that. If you know, there's more, but you get the idea, right? I've got more to that script. By the way, if you're in the area and you have a listing appointment and you're on my team, let me know. I'm willing to go. Closing steps. In order to close, which is to get somebody to make a decision about moving forward, you need to ask them a closing question. Now, we're assuming that you've already built rapport, you've qualified, you've done your presentation, you've showed them. Now, I've also shared with you my universal, best ever final closing question. Put it there. And that's, any questions? So let's say I've gone through with them the terms of the purchase agreement. All right, we're going to offer this much money. The close of escrow is going to be in 30 days. We're going to put down 3%. Right, we've agreed to put it in by the next business day so they know we're serious. Your loan amount is this. We're not having an appraisal contingency, but we do have a loan contingency. You don't care about it. They've got inspections, so we're going to remove that. Do you have any questions about what we're doing about the agreement? Any questions? And if they say no, right, they're either going to say yes or no. If they say no, then great, I'm sending you the forms right now. Let's get it done. If they say, well, yeah, we still have questions, we're not ready to close, right? Because you have to answer what their questions are. Well, to take the lead, I want you guys to okay this. I'm going to be sending you the form. I'll get the ball rolling. I'll, collect what we need. I'll talk to the listing agent. We're going to get the house. If you don't tell them what you want to do, they won't tell you what they want you to do, right? In other words, you have to take the lead. Now, what may happen along this journey is they may have objections. Objections are questions, usually in their mind. Sometimes they go a little bit more than that. And they could be their way of making conversation. Some people just make objections. They might be venting. It might be some deeper thing that they're not telling you about. They might just be messing with you. Just because somebody makes an objection, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. For example, if you're showing property and they're like, "Oh God, look at that carpet. That's awful. Who has carpet like that anymore?" Now that's an objection, I guess, right, to buying the house. But how serious is that? Right? If I said to them, "Well, what would you do? Let's rip out the carpet. What would you put here instead?" And they're saying, "Well, we put in that porcelain tile thing because it's easy to clean and it looks like a real tile." And well, great. So sometimes the fact that they're throwing out objections. By the way, when you're showing property, if they're not mentioning things, they're probably not that serious. Right? If somebody knows right off the bat that this is not their house, they're not going to ask you a bunch of questions about the house, right? Because they already don't like it. So some things to consider: is it an objection or a condition? If they say, "Well, my father-in-law is giving us the money for the down payment, and he said that if we wrote an offer on the house before he got to see it, that he wouldn't give us the money. And if we don't get his money, we can't buy the house." You're saying that's not an objection, that's a condition. There's nothing you got to get that guy to come and look at the house, right? You can't eliminate conditions. It is what it is. I'm an unemployed, bankrupt, convicted arsonist. Well, there's not much you can do about that, right? Call Jody. There's not much you can do about that. Is it serious? Or is it minor, right? I had somebody yesterday giving me all their objections and listening to them. And first of all, I really didn't care about these particular objections. I made no effort to say, "That's true," or, "You're a liar." Or I didn't, I just said, "Okay," when they were done, and we went on, right? Just because they raise it doesn't mean you have to answer it. Right? Not every objection needs an answer. Right? They'll say stuff. Right? I don't like the color of the bank. I don't like the grass in the bank. I don't like that. So yeah, some people are very good at picking out things they don't like. But is this really serious, or is it something that's minor? If it's minor, you just ignore it. If they keep mentioning it over and over again, that usually is a sign that this is serious. Why is that important to you? Why does that concern you? Why do you see that as being a problem? Because sometimes the logic as to why they don't like whatever it is they're saying they don't like, there isn't a lot of logic in it. What is the most practical way to move forward? Get the father-in-law to go look at the house. Get the uncle to look, whoever it's conditioned on. What is your attitude? What are the things that I listen to Chris Voss a lot. Maybe I should do more, but he talks about the late night FM DJ, which means he's also old. Voice, which is sort of this, kind of calming, soothing kind of voice. I know that I sometimes don't hold that very long. Yesterday, when I was talking about the $4 million commercial property, the other agent afterwards said, "You have such a calming voice." And I'm not sure that everybody that talks to me would agree with that. But, when people are raising objections, are you rolling your eyes and looking at the ceiling and shaking your head and going, you shouldn't do stuff like that right at them. Keep it inside. Keep it inside. But the idea is to just pay attention, right? And let them talk. Some people just want to talk. They just want to say what they don't like, right? That doesn't mean they're not going to move forward. They just want you to hear all the things they don't like. Don't talk so much. Yeah. If you're answering objections, you do it as succinctly as possible. The more you say, the more problems you might bring up. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Well, that's another problem that we don't want to buy this house, right? Again, we don't want them to buy a house they don't really want or isn't right for them, but we also don't want them to make a mistake that they're going to regret. So there's a pattern to this, right? And the pattern we're gonna get to. But if somebody gives you an objection, listen to the whole thing before you answer it. Mirror and match rate of speech and body language. You don't need to do that to the point where they want to slap you. But if they're more of a fast talker, it sometimes is better if you could speed up a little. If you're a fast talker and they're a slow talker, you might want to slow down a little bit. Repeat back answer. I put that on one of my, the scripts I had RBA. But sometimes you might want to repeat it back in a way that shows that you were actually listening and, verified that. Ask a clarifying question if you don't completely understand. In other words, so why is that important, or what do you see that doing, or what is it we're trying to avoid, or what effect is that going to have? And sometimes you find out that the real thing that they're talking about is not what it sounded like, right? It wasn't what it sounded like at first. You have to ask sometimes several questions. When you ask questions, so what are the ways that, when I'm on a listing appointment, one of the questions I always ask is, how are you going to pick a real estate agent? What is important to you in picking a real estate agent? What are you looking for your real estate agent to do? And by the way, sometimes I'll ask them, have you ever sold a house before? Okay. What did you like about what that agent did? What didn't you like about what that agent did? Now, if I keep asking questions, why is that important? What are you looking for in the agent? What do you expect the agent to do? How are you going to pick? Right? And I've had people say, well, what do you mean, how are you going to pick? I said, well, are you going to pick the agent that gives you the highest sale price? They list it at the highest price? Are you going to pick the agent with the lowest commission? Are you going to pick the agent that does the most to net you the most money, has the most service? Are you going to pick the agent because they have signs in the neighborhood or don't have signs in the neighborhood? How do you plan on choosing an agent? And what I found is that most people will tell me. They'll just say it. Right? This is what we're looking for. This is what's important. Now, you realize this is more in the qualifying area when we're asking questions. But if you ask enough questions, people will tell you how to sell to them. Or if you don't like that word, how you could show them how you're going to solve their real estate problems. They don't move forward unless there is some pain involved in staying where they are. Yeah. I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today about something very similar, and the line I like to use is, the only thing I hate more than change is the way things are. And there's a significant part of our population, when their personality assessment is done, they fall into this category of people that don't like change. I don't know if you know anybody like that, but there's some people that just don't like change. And unless there's some problem, some pain in not changing, right, they probably won't move. The more you can get them to open up, the better chance you have of finding that pain. So when somebody makes an objection, we would like to isolate it. Is this the only thing? Like, I've had people say to me, well, when I'm closing on a listing appointment, and they say, well, I don't know, you want to think about it. Well, what is it that you want to think about? What is the, and I said, well, the commission, right? 6%, And by the way, many of my listings, not all of them, but many of my listings are at 6%, although I'm doing one for much less than that, but it's just not it's not, they get hung up on the percentage. But if they say, well, 5%, 6%, that's higher than what we were expecting to pay, and I would say, so what is it? I'm asking more questions. So what are you looking for? And they say, well, we'd like to do it for 4.5. That's what we're thinking. Then isolating would mean, well, let me just see if I got you. So pretty much we're all good to go, except you would like the total commission to be 4.5%, not 5.5. Is that it, right? In other words, if we came to an agreement on that, would we be good to go? And I've had people nod, and I would say done, right? Done. Shake hands, assuming we're in a handshaking, wearing masks on our hands, that sort of thing. Done. Deal with it, right? Now, if you're saying, of course, that's assuming that whatever they've suggested is an acceptable commission amount for you. If you don't want to just say, okay, then you would say, well, you'd go back to the, what's more important to you? Is it the amount of the commission or the net? And look at all the services I provide. It's becoming a harder sale sometimes. But you would then handle it. When you've handled it, like answered the objection to the best of your ability, you ask them the closing question, right? And the closing question is, are there any questions? Any more questions? If they say no, then you say, great, the next thing we need to do is I'm going to send you something. It's an agreement so that we can get started. I just need your okay on it. And by the way, when I'm in the old days, we used to print stuff out and take it with us, and that was actually easier in some ways to close because you had the contract and you could talk about it and give them a pen. What I do is, I don't know where my phone is, but what I do is in advance, like on a listing appointment, I actually, in zip forms, go ahead and create all the forms for the listing. And I know all of you know this, but Zip Forms has a mobile app, which I have loaded up before I go on the listing appointment, because the only things that I might need to change are the list price and the commission amount. Most of the rest of it, there aren't that many other really moving parts, right? There is a place where you can ask them to authorize you to get a property inspection, a termite inspection. Those are just taps on the phone, so that right then and there, sitting there, I could send them from my phone the agreement, right, the listing agreement, and we could do it right then and there. I also carry with me a Chromebook, which is a part laptop, part tablet, and if I needed to show people the form, most people, by the way, don't want to see the form. Right? They don't want to read the form. They just want to know the highlights of the form. Okay, send it to me. So being ready if you stall, like let's say you don't have the listing agreement all in zip forms filled out as much as possible. You don't have that sort of thing set up. It's then you have to say at the listing appointment where I'm going to go, and I'm going to do the paperwork and I'll email it to you. It would be better, let me just say, that when you're sitting there and they're like, yes, if you could do it right then and there, right? And the easiest way is to set it up in the mobile app so you're all ready. You could just send it. You might have to make a few changes. If they don't, and you keep repeating this, right? You try to isolate it. Is there anything else? Is this it? Right? So if we came, and I'll give you, so price, right? Well, we thought it would be better to list it at a higher price, right? Isolate it. Is that the only thing that's really, is it the list price? That's the, is that the only thing that's, other than that, you're cool with the commission and everything. You just think we ought to list it at a higher price. What zip form app is the best? There's only one zip form mobile app. And if you were to type in Zip Forms mobile, right, you're going to find that Zip Forms has a mobile app, which you should have on your phone. You should have RPR I think I did a class on things you ought to have on your phone. Something, it wasn't called that, but RPR on your phone, zip forms on your phone. So I usually will do most of the inputting using a laptop. I have a Chromebook, which is an inexpensive computer that boots up in seconds rather than minutes. It needs a Wi-Fi, but my phone is a Wi-Fi. It's easier for me to write offers on that. So once I've already put in the seller's information, I have all that information in zip forms before I go on the appointment. Now in the mobile app, which by the way, sometimes it asks you to log in, right? If you haven't logged in a while. So before you go on the appointment, make sure you can log in to the mobile app. It's also very good if you go on a listing appointment or even a buyer showing that you're logged in to RPR mobile, right? Because I have at times sitting at a listing appointment had that RPR app open and had a better idea of what to list the house for based upon some comparables that had just come up. The other one that I always would take with me for buyers and sellers is I use the Chicago Title Agent 1 app, which is an app that will do net sheets for a seller and a estimated closing cost for a buyer. And it knows all the counties, and it knows who pays for what in each county, and it knows whether or not that city has a transfer tax. Because if I'm at a listing appointment and they're asking me how much are we going to net, I would like to be able to give them an accurate number. So and I have HomeSnap, and I rarely use it. RPR also generally searches the MLS, so does Zillow and Redfin. But of the apps that I might be working with at the appointment, RPR Mobile, Zip Forms Mobile, and then I use Chicago Title Agent 1, but an app that allows you to do net sheets and cost analysis for buyers. You should learn how to use those apps. That's the technical part, right? As opposed to the technique part. What else? Pacing. I don't want to sell my house too cheap. I understand how you feel. I mean, nobody wants to just give it away. But your goal is to get your number one, pacing means you're repeating back things that they've already said to you that it's important to them. Your goal is to get the home sold, and you want it to be as painless as possible. And you'd like your family all to be able to make the move together because they're being relocated. That's why I'm certain you want to price the home correctly. It's just a thing about pacing. We're going to do more of that in another session. Don't make them wrong and don't argue. I'm going to end sort of with that. There are people and not the enemy. By the way, you don't have to work with everybody. I was interviewing an agent to join my team, and after like 30 minutes, I just said, look, this isn't going to work. I didn't say what I really meant, which is, I'd rather have a root canal than to have more conversations with you. But you don't have to work with everybody, right? I'm just saying, if you're not getting along and they're not happy, and they're not happy with you and you're not happy with them, maybe you need to do more lead generating and find more buyers, more sellers. All right, that's what I got for today. If there are any questions, anything about this that I should have said but didn't say. Anyone got a objection you don't know what to say to, something like that? We're a little bit over, so I'll do one of those if there's somebody that has one. Oh, guess not. You're all good. That's always good to see. Well, thank you very much. See you guys next week. We've got some great stuff planning. No comments at this point. All right. Good. Talk to you guys later. Be safe out there. If you're interested in finding... What?
Mahalo.
Yeah, mahalo. If you're interested in finding out more about working with my team or eXp Realty or anything like that, I put the link to make an appointment actually in the handout. So just reach out. I'd love to talk to you. Bye, everybody.